Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ka'echad Kulanu Ka'echad Ba'or Panecha Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ka'echad Kulanu Ka'echad Be'or Panecha Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ka'echad Kulanu Ka'echad Be'or Panecha Baruchenu Avinu Kulanu Ka'echad Kulanu Ka'echad Be'or Panecha Aynay Alam Bam Bam Alam Bam Alalalam Alalalalala Bam Bam Baram Bam Bam Alam Alam Ayalalalala 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 Yo Didi Lai Lai Ay Didi Lai Lai Ayala Ayala Oh Didi Lai 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 Oh Didi Lai Lai Thank you so much. There is really no other way in the world to start a shir.
Rob, did I tell you about the nace that just happened to me out in the snow?
What happened to you just now?
I was wearing a Chutz La'aretz made, a Goyish made kippah.
That is amazing.
Yet,
oh,
HaKadosh Baruch Hu ripped this kippah off my head and destroyed it without me knowing. So I came inside, I realized I wasn't wearing a kippah, and there was a message from HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling me, Moshe, you need to go to a kippah store and get Israeli-made kippahs. That is what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Moshe, that is inspiring.
Kippah, which is on my head, is actually, even though I brought it from America, it was purchased here in Israel.
Unbelievable.
The first time my dad came here for work, so he goes to Ukraine for work and he stops by.
Oh,
When he comes, so the first time he did that, he got like 8 different kippot, and this is one of them.
That's amazing. Unbelievable. People, I'm sorry. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you on this day when it's snowing outside and you could be doing other things, and you're sitting here learning Torah. I think that's unbelievable. You're right. Nothing else. We should be here learning Torah. What I want to do today is I want to learn about, together, I want to learn about the mitzvah of Tzitzit. And what I want to do is I want to do 3 things together when we learn about the mitzvah of Tzitzit. The first thing is a little bit of background to the mitzvah of Tzitzit. That's number 1. Second thing is a little bit of halacha associated with the mitzvah of Tzitzit. And then at the end, like some of the deeper, little bit of Chassidut at the end, some deeper reflections on the mitzvah of Tzitzit. Beseder? So that's the plan. That's our plan for today. I've got a source sheet here, as you can see. I don't know, I'm not sure if anyone photocopied this week. But if anyone wants this sheet, first of all, anyone can take, I've got 2 copies here. So you're welcome to take these at the end. And I will, with great joy, email it to anyone that needs a copy. That wants a copy.
Now and put it on the group chat.
He's a good guy, isn't he? And we saved the trees then as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shua. Okay. I even labeled the sources this week, so there's even more reason to use a source sheet. How are you doing, Ezra?
Good.
Shalom Aleichem. Okay, the mitzvah of Tzitzit. Does anyone know where the mitzvah of Tzitzit appears in the Torah?
Yeah, the midbar. 11.
Very good.
Yeah, at the end of Shlach.
Very good. Excellent. Did you know that for those of us who have done Mariv tonight, we have mentioned the mitzvah of Tzitzit tonight?
And in the morning you mentioned.
And in the morning, and please God, before we go to bed. Oh no, We will not say the third paragraph in Kriyat Shema at night, but exactly, it is the third paragraph of the Shema is where we mention Tzitzit. I want to read to you the beginning of the third paragraph of Shema. Thank you. I want to read to you the beginning of the third paragraph, which is the mitzvah of Tzitzit. Very, very interesting. Listen to this. Vayom Hashem el Moshe lemar. You're familiar with this. Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people. Va'amarta lehem. This is what you should say to them. Va'asu lahem tzitzit. The Jewish people should make for themselves tzitzit. Al kanfei bigdeihem, on the corners of their clothes. Ledorotam, for all generations. V'natnu al tzitzit, and they should put on this beged, this item of clothing called tzitzit, ptil techelet. They should put a thread of techelet. Do you know what techelet is?
Like a blue string, yes?
A blue string. Exactly. A blue string. Today, there's a debate about whether we know what the techelet is. It's a very interesting debate.
We had a shiur. Not even a month ago, or maybe a month ago, or
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, no more than that.
It was
Whatever.
right after. No,
Okay,
it was-
whatever. We had a shiur here
It was about 2 weeks ago, yeah.
reasonably recently, in which a representative from the company that produces the majority of the techelet, he came in and he explained, basically, he gave their argument for why they believe their techelet is correct. And argument.
Which
Yeah.
was this? Was this?
Can't remember.
Was it Ketel?
Can't remember.
Anyway, so as you see, this techelet is not a chumrah. I mean, that's how we're supposed to wear tefillin. The fact that for many, many years, thousands of years, people haven't known what the techelet is, and as a result have had 8 white strings, is a change from what we're supposed to do in the Torah. And it's certainly a sign of the geula that people are now coming back and rediscovering the techelet. That is the mitzvah. Now we continue. Let's continue reading 2 more verses. Vaya lechem letzitzit uri'item oto. You should see, meaning it's a mitzvah. The mitzvah of tzitzit is a mitzvah that we should see. Uri'item oto. And when I see my tzitzit, uzachartem. Now this is very interesting. I should remember kol mitzvot Hashem. All the mitzvot. That's a very like a very ambitious task. But do you hear that? Uzchatem it kol mitzvot Hashem, to remember the entire corpus of mitzvot.
My understanding of that, at least, is not that you need to remember each and every one, what its purpose is, when it applies and when it doesn't, but it's simply conceptually. You remember that there are 613 mitzvot, that you have to do the mitzvot, etc., etc. Just like
you're right. You're quite right. The truth
less
is
of, focusing on each and every mitzvah. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be able to get to anything done in your day.
So Tzitzit, the gematria of Tzitzit is equivalent to 600. And where did they get the 13 from?
we're going to come to that in a minute in the Sefer HaChinuch. We'll come to that in 1 minute. Excellent point, Ezra. I want to finish a pasuk first. We're remembering our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're remembering 30 mitzvot, 30 mitzvot. V'asitem otam, and then you'll do them. And now this is very interesting. Sorry about that. V'lo taturu, you should not. Now, lo taturu is a very hard word. Translate, very hard word to translate. Many translate it, don't stray. Acharei levavchem, after your heart. V'acharei einechem, and after your eyes. Asher atem zonim achareim, because sometimes they can lead you astray. Now there's a lot to say on that lo taturu. If we have time, there is a beautiful, beautiful teaching of the Netziv, Mivolozhin, on these words. V'lo taturu achilu avchem. If we've got time, we're going to stick that in at the end. Okay, why do we do it? Leman tizkru, in order to remember, v'asitem et kol mitzvot Hashem, v'ayitem kedoshim lelokechem, and through that we will become holy to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is a really very powerful concept. Tzitzit, the concept of tzitzit, is like a mesakem of all of the mitzvot. You know, let's say I have mitzvah 1, mitzvah 2, mitzvah 3. Oh my gosh, wow. Shalom Aleichem. What a righteous, holy person. You look like you come from the North Pole.
I like where the priorities are. He doesn't even say hi. He just goes straight to the heater.
Yeah, he knows what he needs. He's not playing around. This guy is unbelievable.
Molly's home is Jerusalem. Malti is Eretz
Absolutely.
Israel.
Okay, quite right. Now, so we just read the psukim, we read the verses pertaining to the mitzvah of tzitzit, and we realize when we read these psukim that we recite, as you mentioned, twice every day, how powerful it is. I see my tzitzit, I connect to the entire corpus of mitzvot, or I contemplate my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A very, very powerful idea. It's sort of, it's almost, there's some mitzvot that say, there's a mitzvah like kibbut avoim, honoring your parents. So when the goal of that mitzvah is to improve my relationship with my parents. We have a mitzvah of kashrut that affects, what we eat affects how we behave. But here, the mitzvah tzitzit isn't aimed at a particular area of my life, but the mitzvah tzitzit is aimed at every area of my life. You hear that? Leman tizkuru et kol mitzvot Hashem Elokechem. Yes.
I just want to clarify that for tzitzit, is it specifically only for the 613 from the Torah? So it doesn't count rabbinic mitzvah. Is that correct?
Oh, that's such a good question. Your question, if it includes the rabbinic mitzvot, I will say that the rabbinic mitzvot, our obligation to follow rabbinic mitzvot is biblical.
Therefore,
You follow? Meaning, it is the Torah that tells us to listen to Chazal, to take the position of Gedolei Yisrael seriously. That requirement is a biblical requirement.
Okay.
So therefore, so it gets a bit grey. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I understand. It was unfortunately a relevant question.
Oh.
irrelevant question?
A relevant question.
You like irrelevant questions.
I try.
Yeah. We try to avoid relevant questions. Absolutely. I don't know what you were thinking there.
Yes.
Okay.
I lost my mind a bit.
Don't worry, not to worry. Malti is such a holy soul. Malti, it is such an honor and a pleasure to see you.
But the question,
Yitzchak.
is, can he see you?
Oh, look at this, and Hirsch is here too. Shalom Aleichem.
More stolen valor. Good stuff.
I like when everyone enters the room. It's like an event at the moment because everyone's coming from snow. So you come into the room. I came.
This is just like in Chutz La'aretz.
I'm not sure anything.
In Poland, in the 1800s, everyone slowly makes their way in. They all come in covered in snow. They sit down, but the room is so warm because it's not just because of the
It's the nigunim. It's the nigunim. Oh.
In the middle of class?
Yeah, please join us.
Tavo, tamuzman.
Sit down.
Okay. The Sefer HaChinuch is a very, very important book. There's a debate about who wrote it, but most people think it was written by a chap called Rav Aaron Halevi. Don't you have a teacher here?
Yeah.
Yes, his name is exactly that.
Excellent, but I think it was a different one. He wrote this book, Sefer HaChinuch, that goes through the 613 mitzvot. He lists the laws, meaning, sort of the details of each of the mitzvot. And then on each mitzvah, he has a paragraph that he begins with the words, Shoresh HaMitzvah. Shoresh HaMitzvah is like the essence of the mitzvah. So I want to share with you what Sefer HaChinuch writes, the Shoresh HaMitzvah, the essence of the mitzvah of Tzitzit. And with the psukim and the what we'll learn now from the Sefer HaChinuch, we will then end part one of our discussion, which is understanding the background to the mitzvah of Tzitzit. Are you ready?
Yes.
I think some of you may have the source sheet in a WhatsApp. Is that right?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Who sent it?
I sent it.
Okay.
So we're now on source number 2. Source number 2 says like this: Shoresh HaMitzvah, the essence of the mitzvah, the root, the essence of the mitzvah, Nigla Bakatuv, is revealed in the text itself. Shehi, Leman Tizkor Kol Mitzvot Hashem, Tamid. This particular mitzvah, the Torah itself explains why we have the mitzvah tzitzit. Sometimes we have a commandment, and then the Sefer HaChinuch has to try to explain to us the rationale for that particular mitzvah. Here explains the Sefer HaChinuch. He doesn't need to do that because the Torah itself tells us, do it, Leman Tizkor Kol Mitzvot Hashem, in order that we should remember all of God's commandments, Tamid, always. Tamid. Who was I talking about the word tamid? Oh no, that was somebody else. Correct. ואין דבר בעולם יותר טוב לזיכרון כמו נושא חותם אדוניו קבוע בכסותו אשר יכסה בו תמיד ועיניו ליבו אליו כל היום. There is no better way for us to constantly remember that we are Avdei Hashem, that we are servants of Hashem. No better way to do that than to constantly wear clothing to remind us of our responsibility. And he quotes the verse, the rabbis explain, this is in the Midrash, Ki milat tzitzit, this is what Ezra was talking about before. Mitzvah tzitzit tirmoz letariyak mitzvah. The word tzitzit reminds us of the 630 mitzvot. Why? Because if you take the word tzitzit, the numerical value of the word tzitzit is 600. How many strings in a tzitzit?
8.
So we're almost there. 608. Can anyone guess how many knots there are on the tzitzit?
5.
Bingo!
But you have it 4.
Oh, well, we're going to go for lechatchila here. 5 knots, 8 strings, 600, and then we get to 630. No, 630. The word tzitzit, the numerical value, it's because it's 400, 90, 10, 90, 10, which is in total 600. Okay. V'od omer li libi. Now, I know this is not the point of our class, but I love this phrase. Od omer libi li libi. This is the Sefer Chinuch's author writing, saying, my heart tells me. Now, I think that's such a beautiful idea. Do you know the people that speak in this way? People that have a deep, deep connection with the Ribbono Shel Olam. People who have a deep connection with, what Hashem wants of us. When they come across a mitzvah and they have a sense of what it is, Omer li libi, my heart tells me. This is what he says, but it comes from a deep, obviously from many, many years of study and scholarship. Then he is able to sort of have a sense of what's going on in the mitzvah tzitzit. Od omer li libi, remez v'zikron shekufo shel adam v'nafsho hakol l'Hashem baruch hu ki alavan. He says, if you think about it, the way that the tzitzit are created, the way the colors of the tzitzit help me connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now this is amazing. Do you know why?
The blue is the same as the sea, which is the same as the sky, or the same as the sky, which is the same as the sapphire, which is the throne of Hashem.
B'diuk. The blue, the blue I look at the sea, look at the sky, and then eventually it takes me to God's throne. So the blue is sort of the spiritual side of a person. Do you know what the white is? What's white? No, this is very exciting. Today of all days, look at this. Halavan remez leguf. The white is talking about the body. Why? Shehu min haaretz shenivret min ha sheleg. Shehu lavan. Isn't that interesting? So the white is like this world. You're like this worldness is the white. Because the physical, like we come from water. Water right now outside is white. like the snow. That is number one. And then the blue is the spiritual, the spiritual realm, like Shul was saying just now. So that combination of bringing the blue and the white together is a combination of the physical and the spiritual, which is really what we create in the tzitzit. I'm just thinking to myself as I was saying that, blue and white on the tzitzit, blue and white obviously also many hundreds of years later after the Sefer HaChinuch wrote this, it's our flag. Our flag is blue and white, bringing together the spiritual and the physical, also to the color of Moshe Siddur. Oh, Hirsch's. Thank you, Hirsch. Great. Okay. So that is in terms of like the background to the mitzvah. It seems to be a very, very powerful concept. This way of reminding me about my relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem Asher.
Sorry,
Did anyone did you notice? You noticed,
I felt it.
didn't you?
More than notice, I felt it.
Oh,
You could tell he was coming before he opened the door.
oh, it was amazing. Asher, what a pleasure to see you. How are you doing? Thank you for bringing so much light into the world and into this very room. See, you weren't here 2 minutes ago, so you don't know what it was like. But we all know, and we all felt the joy of your entry. Okay, your timing is perfect. We just spoke a background to the mitzvah of tzitzit. We looked at the verse, we looked at the rationale in Sefer HaChinuch. Just very briefly, some halachot pertaining to tzitzit, and then I want to share a spot of Chassidut. Okay, so we're going to be reading the Siman in the Shulchan Aruch that talks about tzitzit. I mean, one of it is Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, the way of life, Jewish way of life. There's a couple of Simanim. One of them is number 24, Kaf Daled, and it opens, Kaf Daled, Siman 24, opens with this teaching, with this halacha. Source number 3. Im ein adam lovesh tzitzit, bat arba kanfot, eino chayav b'tzitzit. If I'm not wearing a four-cornered garment,
you don't need to wear tzitzit.
You don't need to wear tzitzit. Correct. However, v'tov v'nachon liyot kol adam zahir lelvosh talit katan kol hayom k'dei sheyizkor hamitzvah b'chol rega. However, what one should do is one should wear an item of clothing dafka to fulfill the mitzvah tzitzit. In other words, I should be careful, even though my jumper doesn't have 4 corners. I'm gonna choose an item of clothing with 4 corners. I'm gonna put tzitzit on those 4 corners, and then I'm able to wear this mitzvah garment.
Okay, I have a question.
Moshe,
Would the Rav be so nice to show us the collars of his shirt and the bases of his shirt? That most collared shirts, if you count the 2 collars and the 2 edges of the base, are 400 garments.
Doesn't count because it needs to be on the bottom and it has to be a certain split. Like a polo shirt got 4 corners.
They're like poncho. Is it poncho? Is that what it's called? Yeah, sometimes those a poncho. You might sometimes.
I bet it is a poncho.
Huh?
Yes.
No, I'm saying that I don't. Is that I haven't said that word for a very long time. Yeah, so if you were to wear it, there's a good chance you would need to put tzitzit. If you were to wear it.
Why would a shirt like this that has
Yeah, but because it's hanging down at the bottom. I'm not sure the corners at the top count.
If you look, there are some tzitzit that have a lapel and a V-neck slit there, and there are corners there, but there's no tzitzit on that.
Yeah, but you only have to wear, even if you have a garment that's more than 4 corners, you only have to wear tzitzit on 4.
Yeah, I think it is I think it's the garments that are hang. It's the hang at the bottom. I don't think it's anything going on at the top. It's more stuff going down at the bottom. I'm going to continue reading over here. Al Cohn. Yesh bo chamisha ksharim connected. We have 5 knots, as we mentioned, connected the 5 books of the Torah on the 4 corners. V'nachon losho ala malboshim. Now he says in the Shulchan Aruch, the cut, and we see that many people to wear it as the highest garment, as opposed to an undergarment. Nowadays, we do not do that. Most of people wear it as an undergarment, but the Shulchan Aruch speaks about wearing a tzitzit as on the top layer. Lefachot yizaher sheyeh lavush tzitzit b'shat hatfilah. But one should be careful to wear tzitzit at least during davening. Meaning, it's true that some people choose not to wear tzitzit because they don't. There's no record. The mitzvah of tzitzit is on the item of clothing, not on the person. If you remember our discussion of a kippah, that is much more to do with the person. Now, the halachot, as we discussed, are very different. The sort of the halachic basis is very, very different, but it's about a person. Here, the tzitzit is not about a person, it's about a situation. If I'm wearing a four-cornered garment, then I need to wear tzitzit. If I'm not wearing a 4-cornered garment, I don't need to wear tzitzit. However, as the Shulchan Aruch points out very, very strongly, tov v'nachon, it is good and proper that I should make sure that I am wearing tzitzit. Meaning, I know in high school there are probably people that say there's no mitzvah, you don't have to.
Oh, see, the high school I
But-
went to,
but-
they said you have to.
So the truth is, they're correct. We do have to.
Incorrect.
Yeah, we do. We do have to wear tzitzit during the daytime. It's true that technically, it's the garment rather than the person. However, because of the words of the Shulchan Aruch over here, Tov and Achon, it has become practice that it is not the garment, but it is the person. Especially in light of the words that we saw earlier, of the Sefer HaChinuch, of the incredible power that the tzitzit provides, in order to connect to all of the mitzvot. Okay, next, one more, before... No, well, let's do one more halakha, then we'll add one more point at the end.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
What is the halakha on the putting on the tzitzit out of your pants
Oh,
or putting inside?
you are amazing. That was a point I wanted to add. I was thinking, should I do that now or later? Asher, excellent question. Should I have my tzitzit out or should I have my tzitzit in? This is a argument, not a debate between the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim. In general,
What do the Ashkenazim say?
Wear it out.
The reason why they're doing
Ashkenazim are out.
Misa.
Ashkenazim are out. The Sfaradim
are
are in. Although I think that the Sephardi custom, I'm not sure, is not based actually on the Shulchan Aruch. It's, I think, a later custom, the Arizal. Do you remember that? Have you heard of the Arizal?
I have. I think you mentioned him before.
Yes, the Arizal is more of a Kabbalistic personality, less of a halachic.
No.
But he viewed that there are two types of tzitzit, as you know. There's the talit katan that we are wearing right now, the undergarment, and there is the talit gadol that many people have accustomed to wear for shacharit. Sfaradim, you wear it from the time of your bar mitzvah. Some Ashkenazim also from the time of bar mitzvah. Some Ashkenazim even before your bar mitzvah, the yekim, and others only from the time you get married. But that second one is a talit gadol. And he said the talit katan, the small talit, is the inside one. That's the covered one. For me to remember inside, it's not to show you. It's something that I'm aware of inside. And then the talit gadol is the one, that every, that's sort of I have the public tzitzit and the private tzitzit. The private tzitzit are inside, and the public tzitzit in the talit gadol are outside. And therefore they say, I keep my tzitzit tucked in rather than out. The Ashkenazi custom is not like that. The many Ashkenazim have the custom to have the tzitzit not inside, but have the tzitzit outside. I think in Israel, a lot of people came to take it out. Now, I think part of that is because we're now at home. Let's say my father or my grandfather grew up somewhere else other than Israel, and sort of my Jewish identity was something I didn't want to flaunt in front of everybody, and therefore people didn't always wear kippot. People kept their tzitzit inside. But now that we are living at home in Israel, so I feel this pride. I've got nothing to hide, and therefore I think that's part of perhaps part of the motivation to feel there's no need for me to hide anymore. I can have my tzitzit out without fear. Sort of, like the next, like the parents have them inside because they made aliyah from some place. I'm talking about like in the, like 30, 40 years ago. And then their kids, who are now my age, they all wear them outside because they feel we're now at home. I don't need to hide anymore in Israel. So therefore it's very, very common in Israel for people to have their tzitzit out. And I think also in Jewish communities across the world, there's a sense of, I don't need to be embarrassed about my Jewish identity. And therefore, it happens to be the Ashkenazi custom, but that's why most Ashkenazim now, if a generation ago they didn't Now they do. Thank you. Very, very good question.
And I think, in general, even the Sephardim has used the minhag of putting it out rather than putting it in.
It could be I think the Sephardi custom is not to have your tzitzit hang out, but I think many do.
Yeah.
I noticed also it's like a very casual style of dress in Israel. Is that people walk around with their shirts untucked, and they get dressed, they put on the pants, and they just throw on their tzitzit, and they just throw on a shirt, button it up, and walk out.
Yes, that's probably part of it as well. Tucking in is really a very unnecessary activity. Yes, there's probably part of that too. Very, very important. So we spoke about the mitzvah, we spoke about in or out. I want to talk about, this is really something very, very interesting, about why 8 strings. Why 8 strings, and then a bit of Chassidut. Yes.
Before we move ahead, can I ask you one more thing? So
Sure.
When you told us about it's more about the clothes that we wear of the tzitzit, and now it has become more of the person who
Correct.
is wearing it. So it has become a mandate to wear a tzitzit if
Correct.
you are a Torah observant.
Correct.
Am I right?
Correct. Absolutely. Yes. Definitely. The debates, I know that there are certain communities that are very, very particular about tzitzit, and they'll even sleep, make sure to wear tzitzit during the daytime. And there are certain communities, I think Chabad, where they sleep wearing tzitzit as well. Most do not sleep with their tzitzit, but there are communities that take it that serious. They'll be that careful to have this opportunity. I think part of the reason why I don't view it as a requirement on the garment, but as a requirement on me, tzitzit is such a gift. It's such an honor, such an opportunity to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He talks, sort of the Sefer HaChinuch, talks about this excitement. So I want to utilize every opportunity to wear it. I remember when I was a little kid, there was a story about this boy. The President of the United States of America came to his town, and everybody was there lining up, to see and wave at the president. And this little kid was there as well, and he wanted the president to sign his autograph book. So he took out his autograph book and he asked the president to sign it, but he didn't have a pen. But the president had a pen on him, so the president took out his pen and signed it to him, and then by mistake, when he returned the autograph to the kid, he gave the boy the autograph, and he gave him the pen as well. And because he was, whisked so quickly ahead, there was no way to catch up with him to return the pen. So this kid could hardly hold back his excitement. He's holding the president's pen. Can you imagine? And then in the story, they're saying, Lahavdil elef havdalot. We don't have the president's pen, but we have clothing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us to wear and to remember our relationship with him. Why would I not want to wear that?
But he didn't. He told you, if you're wearing this, then put it on. Why would people be wearing it? Because that was the general... Because they were not as skilled tailors. I mean, a corner is easy to make.
Okay, but I hear what you... But I would say...
Actually happened? The president with the pen?
No, I think it was just a story to tell us about tzitzit. Here, come on, just to read from the Sefer HaChinuch again for you, Shur, and then come back to Yaakov. It's really beautiful. Noseh chotem adonav kavur beketzuto asher yichaseh bo tamid. This opportunity. So people don't want to, push off that opportunity. Yes, Yaakov.
If someone was to ask you, why...
Here you are.
Well, if somebody, not being me, was to ask you, why...
Wait, is this relevant?
Somewhat.
Oh,
but
bother.
Somewhat. Maybe a little.
Seriously?
But not really. It's a little stupid, but I'm curious. You don't wear your tzitzit to the mikvah. Is that correct?
Well, you don't wear anything in the mikvah.
Well,
yes.
you don't wear anything, but why?
Because...
Oh, that's something else.
To immerse your entire body?
You don't,
We don't wear them in...
Anything, yeah.
Yeah, so it's whenever I'm wearing clothing, I wear a tzitzit. But at a time that I'm not wearing clothing, then obviously I don't wear tzitzit.
No, but you... Okay. No, Like I know
There is a question about sports. If you're involved in sports,
Okay.
do you wear tzitzit for sports or not wear
But it
tzitzit
might
for
get
sports?
damaged.
Yeah, it might get ripped. And also, like, you're sweaty. I'm not, sort of, do you wear it, do you not wear it? There's a debate.
Well, I mean, there's IDF tzitzit, combat tzitzit,
Really?
It's made out of polyester,
polyester,
which
they're
begs
really
the
good.
debate on whether or not it would need the tzitzit anyways.
It's
Yeah,
like
right,
a T-shirt to have.
Pardon? What's that?
Sorry,
Yeah, people, you're right. You can get these vests with a slit at the top. Quite right. Okay, I want to talk about two more items. The first item, I want to talk about Y8 strings, which is really phenomenal. And then a little bit, like some deeper ideas, I think, pertaining to tzitzit. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch, again, we're back to the Shulchan Aruch, as we were earlier. Within the there's like a section of halachot, which are a number of chapters long, all about tzitzit. Within that, this is chapter 11. Orach Chaim, Siman Yud Aleph. Minyan chutei tzitzit b'chol kanaf, arba kfulim shem shmona. Vim hosif pasul. The number of tzitzit that you need to have on every corner is double 4, meaning 4 strings that you double over, which makes 8. You follow? Like 4 long strings. When they go through the loop inside there, that comes 8 strings hanging down. You follow? I have 8 strings hanging down. If you have more than that, it's pasul. Now, what happens if one of the strings gets caught or like gets cut? What do you do?
So how it's cut. If you have the tzitzit, as long as the knot isn't damaged, there's a certain amount that the string is allowed to be cut, that it's still kosher.
Correct. How much is it? The amount that you need to have is im lo, if it's pasul, im lo nishar kadei aniva. Kadei aniva is the amount of string required to tie a bow. So it's normally like a thumb's length, like a little thumb.
Yeah.
Like a thumb. If you've got a thumb's length, if it breaks, and you've got a thumb's length, then it's okay. You follow? But if you cut one of your tzitzit, I know you go cycling.
You can only cut it with certain things. You can't use metal to cut tzitzit.
That's a separate issue. But if over here, if it cut by mistake, if it got caught on something, as long as you've got a knei aniva, which is about the length of a thumb, then it's fine. Then the tzitzit is okay. Yes.
Yeah, the Sephardim tzitzit usually tends to be shorter than the Ashkenazi.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they have more time.
Right, and sometimes I don't know. I've never measured it, but I think some of them, one of the strings is I think shorter than the thumb, if I'm not wrong. But some of them are really really short. This one time I went to buy a tzitzit in Talikatan, and he said, "Which one do you want?" Sephardim one has to give me both, 1 inch, and one of the Sephardim one, it was really really short.
Really?
Yeah, because there are 8 of them. 8 strings are there. So
Correct.
I think one of them, because they're not cut in the same, length. So one tends to be smaller, the other tends to be longer. So it was mixed match, and I think one of them was shorter than the.
It shouldn't. No, that probably is a bit too long. Short. I'm not sure. Yeah, it should be. What normally happens is you normally have. Has anyone here ever made tzitzit?
Yeah.
So you normally have. Oh, you've done it. You have 3 strings that are all the same length. The 4th one is much longer, and that's the wrapping one. Now, sometimes when people don't wrap well, then that last string, there's hardly any left. But there does need to be a kadei aniva. A kadei aniva was the amount that you need to tie a bow. There has to be that remaining on all of the strings at the end.
Rob,
Yes.
I do have a question. Is it permissible? I understand this is something sometimes people will do on the buttons of their shirt. If the sewing is coming off the button, are you allowed to take like ladies' clear nail polish and put that on the knot right at the end of your tzitzit in order to prevent?
Yeah, people do that. Yeah.
It's permissible.
Yeah, people will put glue at the bottom as well to stop it fraying at the end. Yeah.
But then you don't. Is it not also a measure that you need not to close to the corner? Measure and if it's completely one outside, you can't put it in.
No, multi. It's just a little bit of paint or glue on the knot.
It's to prevent it fraying at the end,
It's to prevent the knot from coming undone.
right at the bottom of the string.
Probably. Yeah, I think he's done some shows with him.
Now, what we were saying over here, when we talk about the small knots, the ones that if one is too short, if one is just like the length of a thumb, it's okay. If two are that length, then it's a problem because you worry it might be the same piece of string. You follow? Because the 8 is really 4 pieces of string. And because you want to make sure it's not the same piece of string, so you don't want to have that on more than one of the 8 strings. You follow? Now, why? I just want to talk for a few minutes. I found this absolutely amazing. Why is it that it is 8 why 8 strings? So Rashi in the Rashi on the Torah, the Rashi on the Shema talks about the 8 strings. So when he discusses it goes through all the. It's very important Rashi on the 3rd paragraph of the Shema. I want to read to you just one short piece from that Rashi going through the Tzitzit. He says, the Shmone Chutim Sheba. Why do we have 8 strings on the Tzitzit? Now he says, Keneged, corresponding to Shmone Yamim Sheshahu Yisrael Misha Yatsu Mitzrayim Ad She'amru Shira Alayam. The 8 strings correspond to the 8 days from the day they left Egypt until Kriyat Yamsuf. Nachon? Now that's there's meaning Erev Pesach till the 7th day of Pesach. Erev Pesach, which was the day they prepared to leave Egypt, Nachon, and then the 7 days of Pesach. In total, 8 days. We have 8 strings corresponding to those 8 days. That is Rashi, and Rashi is based on the Midrash. Now, there is a very important commentator on Rashi. I'll just tell you in brackets, if any of you ever learnt Rashi on the Torah, I remember when I was in yeshiva, there was a book, and it was like it had the words of Rashi at the top of the page, and then 11 commentaries on Rashi. So Rashi is a commentary on the Torah,
cool.
and that book, do we have that here as well? And 11 commentaries on Rashi.
I see that. That looks really cool.
That's one. That's a translation.
Yeah, because it has so many commentaries on the Rashi.
No. But that's a translation and explanation of Rashi. But this was 11 different people. 11. It looks a bit like a Mikra Ot Gedolot if you've ever seen it. So one of the commentators, one of the most well-known commentators on Rashi is the Maharal of Prague. The Maharal of Prague, in his commentary, is called the Gur Aryeh.
Did he build a golem?
I don't think he did, but the people who think somebody built a golem think he's the one that built it. So I don't think he did, but the people who think that somebody did think he was the one that built it. You follow what I'm saying? Now, in one of the editions, there was a Rabbi Hartman who actually currently now lives in London, wrote an excellent, brought out an excellent edition of the Gur Aryeh with footnotes. So I want to read to you a footnote citing a different book from the Maharal of Prague to discuss why we have the 8 strings on our tzitzit. And this is what he says. Madua mitzvah tzitzit nikva al pi tchilat hayetziyah yoter me'asher sof hayetziyah. So he says, why is it that the 8 strings correspond to the beginning of the story? Meaning, when we crossed the Red Sea, that was really the beginning of our story. After we cross the Red Sea, we then cross over to the other side, and then subsequently we receive the Torah. But these 8 days from Erev Pesach until the splitting of the Red Sea are the beginning of a story. So if I want to get a complete sort of chunk of time, I could do 49 days. I know it might look differently, till receiving of the Torah at the end. But why is it that Rashi, quoting the Midrash, chooses to end the sort of the period of time, that the tzitz corresponds to a period of time, and that period of time at the beginning of the story? The beginning of the story, after the crossing of the Red Sea, much before, a month before we received the Torah. Wouldn't you want to include the whole the whole story? Especially if you remember, sweet, wonderful people, as I'm sure you know, immediately after we read the mitzvah Tzitzit, we have, remember, I am Hashem who took you out of Egypt. Nachon? Well, that culminated in the receiving of the Torah. So why do we end the 8 days at the beginning of the story, splitting of the Red Sea, rather than ending it at the end of the story, receiving of the Torah or entering the land of Israel? Crossing the Red Sea is the beginning of the story. Okay, that's his question. The question of the Maharal Mibrak, and he answers based on the Talmud in Menachot. The Gemara Menachot is the Talmud in Menachot is where the mitzvah of Tzitzit appears. He says, Ki lashon Tzitzit. The Tzitzit is a very interesting idea. Tzitz is like Tzitz hasadeh, sheyotze minasan nikret tzitz. So when you look at a field, right? So the grass or the grain growing out from is called the tzitz. Tzitzit is like the stuff that's growing out from us, like hanging off us. Like we're the field, and this is the produce growing off us. You follow? Isn't that a nice analogy? That's what he says over here. Yotzim min hatalit b'sfat habet nikret tzitzit. Al shem yotzim min habeged, coming up from the clothing. V'dafka b'sof habeged. Dafka, and that comes back to your shirt question, at the bottom of the garment, not the top of the garment. That is an answer to Moshe's question of earlier. The tzitzit are at the corners, at the bottom of the garment. Ki sof habeged yotzim min habeged, because that's the end. That's where it ends. Therefore, that's where the crop, as it were, comes out. Lefichach, shekula mitzvot tzitzit kneged kol haTorah kula, ki kol hamitzvot she'adam oseh al yadam hadam hu befoal al yedei maaseh hamitzvah. U'mitzvot tzitzit kamer hu ha'yitzia lefoal. He says tzitzit, the tzitzit, sort of a field, right? If you could say like this, ground is potential, right? And then crops are taking potential and turning them into something real, converting the potential to something actual. You follow? So the field represents potential, the crops are what actually happens. So too the beged is the potential, and what's coming out from it is the actual. You follow? Like transfer, like looking at the exactly. The potential and the actual, like the field and the crops, the clothes and the tzitzit. Is that clear to everybody? You follow? Now it goes on and says even more. 1 second. It is the mitzvah of tzitzit, that takes a Jew from his potential, like this transition that I see when I look at a field. When you look at a field, you see the transition from potential to actual. For the field is what could be, and then the crops is what happened. You follow?
So when we say potential and the reality, are we talking about potential to be a Jew and being a Jew, or potential to be religious and being really religious?
So we're going to come and talk about that now. Let's explain now. So the representation of taking potential and translating into something real, tzitzit are the representation of that. You have the beged, the clothing, which is like the field, and then the tzitzit are like the crop. Nachon? And it's supposed to remind us that we should take our potential and turn it into something real, performing all of the mitzvot. Do you remember at the beginning? It's called mitzvot Hashem. So any mitzvah that I do, I can draw inspiration to do that mitzvah from the tzitzit, because the inspiration of tzitzit is the realization that I can turn potential into something real. You follow? That's why, explains the Gur Aryeh, it ends at the beginning of the story. Because he wants to include the whole story as part of the actual. You follow? Meaning, he wants to end before we turn the potential into actual. So I want to end the story when we begin as a nation, which is when we crossed the Red Sea. He wants to stop the analogy at the beginning of the story, because it is the whole story that I can turn from potential to actual. Just like every mitzvah, I have the potential. Exactly. I have the potential to do every mitzvah that I'm required to do. And because my tzitzit represent every mitzvah, therefore, I want the symbolism to start at the beginning of the story, before I turn to any potential into actual. Is that clear? That is from the Gur Aryeh, the Maharal from Prague. Okay, I want to share with you one more idea. This idea is from the Shem Shmuel, Rosh Shmuel Bornstein Asokachov. And I have to say, it is a beautiful idea. We're going to end slightly earlier today for two reasons. Partly because I hope you're all going to go now to the Kotel. I just want to tell you all a story, actually, before we do this last source. The last time it snowed, the last time it almost snowed, my son felt we have a duty to go to the Kotel, because so many people can't get to the Kotel. Which the one in the old city? Oh, sorry. Uriel. Our oldest son, beautiful, wonderful boy, and I'm so excited that you'll get to meet him. He's becoming a Talmid Chacham. I don't think he's going to be coming tonight, but he felt if you're able to get to the Kotel night, like tonight, not just to take pictures, but there's so many people that can't get here tonight. We have a responsibility. If it's accessible for us, then we need to go.
So I have, just like everyone else in here, I hope, finished davening to Felix Mariv.
I have not.
You have not? Oh.
I'm
jealous of you.
I know.
But Rob, I feel like I don't like going to the Kotel.
You can tell him.
I don't like just going to the Kotel and just kind of just looking. Yep, that's the wall.
You can you can make a personal prayer. You can read Tehillim.
Read Tehillim?
Yes, personal prayers. Absolutely.
Is there a preferred Tehillim that one should read when at the Kotel?
Let's discuss this immediately afterwards. Is that okay? Excellent question. I want to share with you a story. I want to share with you a story from Parshat Lech Lecha. This is a crazy, crazy story. The truth is, I'm going to summarize it because you haven't got the sheet where we're caring about the environment. Huh?
We have that in WhatsApp.
Oh, but it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's good. We'll do Torah Shabbal Peh. There's an amazing story about Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, if you remember, was involved in saving Lot, who was taken a captive in a battle between the 5 kings and the 4 kings. And miraculously, Avraham Avinu, with a very small army of men, managed to defeat this huge army of 5 kings and their armies against him. And the king of Sodom
offered him money,
offered him everything. Well, offered him, really a way to say thank you for saving him.
He said, "I won't take a shoelace from you."
Excellent. Yeah, exactly. I won't take even a shoelace from you, the king of Sodom. The Midrash on that verse, I won't take a shoelace. On that, do you remember? Is everyone familiar with the story? Yes. That story when Avraham Avinu said, "I won't take a shoelace." The Midrash says, in the merit of Avraham Avinu refusing the string of the king of Sodom,
We put strings on
he was rewarded with the string of Tzitzit. Isn't that amazing? The Midrash says, because you refused the gift from the king of Sodom, I, said God, I'm going to give you and your descendants, us, until now. I'm going to give you a different gift. The gift I'm going to give you is... Isn't that amazing? It's Tzitzit.
Interesting.
Isn't that amazing? That is the Midrash. Now, on that Midrash, the Shem is Shmuel. Rav Shmuel Bornstein of Sokachov says something absolutely incredible. A beautiful idea. I mean, it's cute. Nachon, the Midrash. But you have to understand that the Midrash has to be talking about a very deep idea. It's not just, chut, string, let's match them up. There has to be a deeper understanding of what is it that Avram Avinu refused when he says, I don't want to receive this from you, the king of Sodom, and what is it that he accepted when he received the mitzvah of Tzitzit. You follow?
He refused it from Sodom because he didn't want the world to think that he was made rich through Sodom and not Hashem.
No, right, the Torah, that's the Pasuk.
He didn't necessarily accept the tzitzit from Hashem. We might have, but Hashem never comes and says, put tzitzit on.
Oh, so you're right. So the Midrash, just to explain briefly, like the purpose of a Midrash, meaning like how to understand a Midrash in general, then we'll come to the Shem Shmuel. This is an important idea, not relevant just here, but relevant in general as well. A Midrash is an opportunity. I learned this from my teacher, an incredible Rav, who actually gives a shir on Wednesday nights. His name is Rav Brovender, and he once explained that Midrashim, certainly the Midrashim quoted by Rashi, are an opportunity for us to understand the text through the eyes of Chazal. Meaning, they sometimes deviate from what the text actually said. Mm-hmm. But just like when I read any book, when I read Oliver Twist or David Copperfield, mm-hmm. so that conjures up images in my mind, and conjures up different images in everyone else's minds. It conjures up images in each one of our minds based on our experiences. So I want to understand how Chazal read the Torah. So I read the text, and then when Chazal read this, the parasha of the Shema, when they read this Avraham Avinu, so this is the way they saw the text. You follow? Very, very important. Anyway, so Shem Shmuel explains like this. He says, string, when I have a rope is used to tie things together. Right. That's the purpose of rope. You have a parcel, you want to tie it together to make sure nothing goes out. A rope is to hold things together. He understood that if Avram Avinu were to accept a gift from the Melech Sodom, that would tie them together. He would be indebted to him. It's like literally being tied to him. Mm-hmm. So God said, because you refuse to be tied to him, you will be tied to me. Mm-hmm. It's almost as if, like you have, lahavdil, elef havdalah, this is not good. But let's say, I'm holding one side of the string over here. Do you know who's holding the other side of the string? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You hear that? So it might not, because of gravity, I don't feel it, but I'm holding one side, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is holding, and then I pull, and it brings me closer. The strings on the tzitzit is what ties me, literally ties me to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avram Avinu refused to be tied to the king of Sodom, and the reward is he became tied to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I want to end here with a blessing. I want to bless, we'll end now and then we'll take a question afterwards, but I want to end with a blessing for all of us, that we should wear our tzitzit with pride, that we should utilize this opportunity of being connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There are some crazy, crazy stories in the Talmud of people who are protected from terrible, terrible sins as a result of wearing their tzitzit.
Yes.
There's Pikuach Nefesh stories of people using their tzitzit as tourniquets.
Yeah.
Rabbi Cohn, I actually heard a story about a guy who was about to do Gilo Arayot, but instead he didn't. And
yes.
The person he was about to do it with converted and became Jewish and married him.
Excellent.
Yeah,
That. Yes, that's a famous story in the Talmud.
Is that in the Gemara?
It is. So there are the tzitzit are far more powerful than we realize. That the opportunity to draw ourselves closer to our Kodesh Baruch Hu using the Tzitzit is far more powerful than we realize. I just want to bless us all, Yehi Ratzon, that we should be blessed to utilize our Tzitzit, and through our Tzitzit to become closer to Hashem and to Kol HaMitzvot. Yishar Koach to all of you. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the snow.